Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are previewing the offseason for the San Antonio Spurs. This team is at a very interesting spot within the crux of the NBA currently because they are on the verge of going into a rebuild, but they have not exactly quite triggered that rebuild by trading away their veteran players that could have some value on the trade market. So today we are going to be outlining what this team can do to improve their look for the future and improve their chances of winning a championship somewhere down the line. Obviously, this team has a great coach in Greg Popovich. Popovich is one of the best coaches of all time, and although he may have declined in the coaching ranks in the recent years due to his inability to grasp the new way that basketball is being played in the NBA, he's still a great coach, and there is no reason why this team should ever consider moving on from him, or removing him, I should say. Not removing on from him, but the only reason why they should ever hire a new coach is if he retires, because this guy is, in my opinion, the greatest coach of all time due to the success that he's led the Spurs franchise to. So they should really hang on to him. There's no reason to move on, like I said before. In the draft, they have the 11th pick, and there are a few different ways that I could see them going with this pick. The first guy that I would love to see them get here would be Obi Toppin. If he's available, he would be a very nice player for them to begin their rebuild around. They really don't have any forwards that they are building around, so he could be a perfect guy to insert as a crux of their rebuild. And I really like Obi. I think that he has a lot of offensive skills that are going to translate fantastically to the NBA. He's a good three-point shooter. He's a good athlete, as we've seen from his dunks. He can get to the rim. He's really got as close to a complete offensive game as anyone in this entire draft class does. However, the questions come on the defensive end of the floor. He struggles with lateral quickness, and he's not quite tough enough to bang it out with big guys inside. That's why I think that there's potential that he could drop to 11. Do I think it's likely? No. But if he does, the Spurs should jump right onto that. My second favorite guy for them to take here would be Devin Vassell from Florida State. Vassell is a very good 3-and-D wing player who is one of the best shooters in the draft, definitely one of the best shooters who has a potential lottery pick, and he's also a very, very good defender, as I said before. There is not many players that he will be unable to guard after coming into the NBA. He will be fine guarding guards and wings. He's not quite ready to guard bigs yet, so he's not completely switchable, but he's a very good defender. He also has a bit of an ability to put the ball on the floor and score. However, his ability as a shooter off the bounce needs to improve, as well as his shot selection once he puts the ball on the ground, because he settles for lots of off-balance shots as well as some floaters that are not very high percentage looks. If neither of those two guys are on the board, which is completely possible, as in my current mock draft, I have Toppin going to the Knicks at 8 and Vassell going to the Wizards at 9. I hope to make a mock draft video sometime. I just need to do more research, but I don't think that it's very likely either of those two fall to the Spurs is the point that I'm trying to make here. But if they do, the Spurs should for certain draft them. Outside of them, I'd like to see them look at Siddique Bay out of Villanova. I think that Bay has potential to be a very good playmaking wing and also a very, very good defender. I think he's being one of the most overlooked players in this draft, as I see people having him dropped into the early 20s, and I think that there is no reason why that should ever happen. I think that Bay is going to be a very good offensive player at the next level due to his ability as a jump shooter and also his ability to make plays for his teammates. On the defensive end of the floor, Bay can guard pretty much any position 1 through 4, as we saw him take very challenging matchups against guys like Marcus Howard, Devon Dotson, and Miles Powell this season in his collegiate year at Villanova. We saw him take on those challenging matchups, and obviously that's not the same as guarding guys like Steph Curry and Damian Lillard, but he does profile as a very switchable wing, and I like him a lot for that reason on the defensive end of the floor, as well as the offensive attributes that he can bring to your team that I talked about earlier. If he is not there, or if they are not certain about the kind of player that he is and not sure that he is worth the 11th pick. Isaac Okoro is another option. I'm not as high on Okoro as most because I really think that the jump shot is a problem, and I don't think that it's going to improve because the mechanics are wonky. But if the Spurs believe that they can improve the jump shot, then this could be a nice spot for Okoro to fall, and with the developmental staff that this team has, Okoro could be a really, really nice selection for them because he does have a really high potential if he's able to figure out that jump shot because he is a very good driver and playmaker on the offensive end of the floor with a decent handle. He's a great rebounder, and he's a great defender as well, both on ball and in the help defense. Aaron Nesmith, Tyrese Maxey, and Precious Achiuwa are a couple other guys that I think that they could consider with this pick. Aaron Nesmith is a forward from Vanderbilt who is a very, very good shooter and could potentially be a very good scoring wing for the Spurs. However, I do see some overlaps with Keldon Johnson in his game, so maybe that isn't the best fit for this team. Tyrese Maxey is a guard out of Kentucky that I really like. However, this team does have a lot of guards, and this is maybe a little early for Maxey to go in the draft, so this is probably not the most likely landing spot for him. I pretty much only threw Achiuwa on here if the Spurs are hell-bent on taking a center. However, I don't think that that is very likely because this is probably too early for Achiuwa due to the multitude of players that are just flat out better than him that will still be on the board at this point in the draft. They also have the 41st pick, and this is a spot in the draft that I don't feel terrible about. Obviously, if someone like Desmond Bane, Robert Woodard, Elijah Hughes, Zeke Naji, or Malachi Flynn falls to you here, you should snatch those guys right up because I see a lot of those guys as some sleepers who could end up being good NBA rotational players. However, they are all supposed to go earlier in the draft than 41, so some more realistic guys I could see them taking here are Paul Reed, Sam Merrill, and Emmanuel Quickley. I think that Reed profiles as a very good forward in the NBA and a guy that will certainly be a rotational player, and if you're getting a rotational player with the 41st pick, that's excellent value. Sam Merrill and Emmanuel Quickley were the other two that I talked about. These two are both excellent shooters, and although it's likely that at first they will have to play the two, there is potential that they could move over to the point guard spot, and a very good shooter at the point guard spot is always valuable to an NBA team. In terms of trades, if they want to make one last run with the LaMarcus Aldridge, DeMar DeRozan core, they could try to make a trade for Chris Paul. I think that that is certainly not an out-of-the-question move for this franchise, as they could go for one last run with this core and Greg Popovich at the helm. I think a package of something along the lines of Metu, one of the young players on this roster, Rudy Gay, and Patty Mills, along with the second-round pick they have this season and their second-round pick next year, could be a worthy package to bring Chris Paul to San Antonio. And if they can do that, I think that it would not be a great move because you're giving up picks. But if they want to make another run at being a solid playoff team, that could definitely be a move that they would look into. Otherwise, they could fully embrace the rebuild and trade the four veterans, I guess, who are on their roster. We'll start with the two former All-Stars, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge. Both of these two have kind of seen the NBA grow around them. Their skill sets as largely mid-range offensive scorers has fallen out of favor in the NBA, so I don't think that their trade value would be particularly high. However, if they could fetch a late first-round pick for Aldridge, along with an expiring contract, and for DeRozan, if they could bring in something like a good young player and a first-round pick, those would be excellent returns for those two guys. And I think that the Spurs really should look into moving them in order to accelerate this rebuild because they have a solid young core with guys like DeJounte Murray, Keldon Johnson, Derek White, Jakob Poeltl. However, if they are able to add to this core with more good young players, that would be amazing for them. I think that a trade a lot of people are going to talk about are something like Aaron Gordon and the 15th pick for DeRozan. I'm not sure if that works with the cap, but if the Spurs could do that, that'd be outstanding. It would give the Magic a good playmaker, and it would bring the Spurs a good value return for DeMar, as Aaron Gordon could fit right in as a solid forward for this team moving forward. So that would certainly be a trade that I would do if they were offered it. Patty Mills and Rudy Gay are the other veterans they could trade. If you could fetch a late first round pick or early second round pick for these guys, that would be fantastic value. And I think that both of these guys do have that kind of value because they have shown that they can be rotational players on a very good team. In free agency, the Spurs have Marco Bellinelli, Jakob Poeltl, Bryn Forms, and Drew Eubanks as the important guys that they could lose moving forward. I think that Bellinelli will not return to this team next season unless it's on a minimum because he just doesn't have any value to them if they are rebuilding. They should really try to retain at least one of Jakob Poeltl and Derek Forbes. Those two guys have Bryn Forbes. I think I said Derek Forbes. Definitely not Derek. It's Bryn Forbes. But Forbes is a very good shooter and a guy that can play the 2 spot as well as a little bit of point guard. And Poeltl is a very good defensive center. And these two guys are both role players that they could surround their young core with moving forward. I also think that they could look to sign a wing. Someone like Justin Holiday would look very good in Spurs colors. This team has some very good young players, as I said before. DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Keldon Johnson, all these guys have shots to be starters. However, the thing that this team is lacking is that one star. So I think that the Spurs need to focus on finding their star for the future and the centerpiece of their rebuild. Maybe they can get that guy with the 11th pick. I think Toppin would be worth a shot for certain if he's still on the board there. But otherwise, I think that moving up in this draft is certainly possible. If they could get up into the top 5, I think that Cleveland would probably take the 11th pick, the 41st pick, and Derek White, if you could do something like that for the 5th pick. And the Spurs are very high on someone like Denny Avdija, then maybe he's the centerpiece of your rebuild moving forward. You partner him with DeJounte Murray, and maybe that's a good young core for the Spurs. I did not have that in my script. I just kind of came up with it off the top of my head, and I'm not sure that I love that trade, but I do think that moving up in the draft is something the Spurs should consider because they just need to find the centerpiece of their rebuild. And maybe they do think that DeJounte Murray can be that player, but he just hasn't shown the offensive skill to be that guy yet. He's an excellent defender, and I think that he could very well be a third best player on a championship team at some point. But if he's your first or second option, you are not going to be at that type of level, so they need to find someone that can be that guy for them. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I think that the Spurs have a pretty bleak future, although they do have an excellent organization, and Greg Popovich is a great coach. They have a great front office. Top to bottom, this is one of the best organizations in the league. They have a great culture, and as we saw in this playoff run that is going on currently, culture is very important in the NBA. Teams that had it, like the Heat and Nuggets, went far in the playoffs, and teams that didn't have it, like the 76ers and Clippers, were eliminated earlier than they would have liked. So this team has the culture. Now they just need to find the players. Like I said, hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. That's it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all again very soon.